The government's deadline to report back on the Gupta scandal has come and gone, and South Africa is still being kept in the dark. A preliminary investigation has blamed the suspended head of state protocol, Bruce Kolwane. Neshaan Bolton is the executive director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. The foundation, you might know, is insisting that the report should be made public when it's finalized. Good evening, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. So you're calling on government to make this pro-public. Obviously, you're concerned that they're not going to do that. And if you look at the deadline, which has come and gone, it would seem that that is the case.
Well, at the outset, the foundation welcomed the fact that government speedily responded to this issue. Very unusual. A full cabinet cluster briefed the media, made a commitment to undertake the investigation, and seemed to imply that its report would be made public. We hope that that will still be the case. The 7 working days would expire any time now. And one still hopes that that report and the contents of it will be made public.
Have you asked for or received any guarantees that it will be made public, apart from what we've been told?
No, I think all of us are waiting to see what happens when that self-set deadline in fact expires.
Are you really happy with the composition of those investigating this particular scandal? A collection of directors general. Surely government can't be a player and a referee at the same time. Would it not have been better for this probe to have been more independent?
I think that would have been the ideal. It would have been more ideal for it to have been independent. But nevertheless, the fact that it was done as speedily as it has been, which is very unusual in South Africa, it is a step in the right direction. I think in all fairness, one must wait to see whether the findings of this is as comprehensive as one would like it to be before we can actually pass comment thereafter.
But surely we need more than just a step in the right direction. We need full investigation and full disclosure. And it would seem at this point that questions are being raised about the composition of those investigators.
Having served in government, I think that in this instance, government itself would need to understand what went wrong in terms of its own systems and procedures. I think the general public has a right to demand much more than just this particular incident. The foundation is on record as wanting to ensure that this probe is as comprehensive as possible, because it's not just the landing of the plane that's at stake. But for us, what is important is to understand how a single family has come to wield such enormous power and influence in South Africa today, given that they've arrived in this country just probably under 10 years ago.
And you believe that's the key question that needs to be answered?
That is a fundamental issue. And I think that backs up what Cosatu's latest statement is, that it would be easy to blame it just on frontline workers or some officials and functionaries. But we need to understand on whose directives they were in fact carrying out the instructions, if there were such instructions at all.
At this point, we've had one person who's effectively fallen on his sword, perhaps not by his own desire. That's the suspended head of protocol, Bruce Kolwane. Patently, there should be other people that will take responsibility or should take responsibility for that. Who are they?
The chain of
Where does the
command.
buck stop, in other words?
The chain of command for this would be fairly long. It's a national key point. No one individual can make such a decision without having been under the impression that there was an instruction or having received a firm instruction to do so. So I think it can't stop with a single individual. And that is why the foundation is of the view that this probe can't stop merely at this incident. The influence of this particular family extends far beyond this incident itself, and requires a much more deeper probe.
But given that we're ramping up to an election, Mr. Bolton, next year, that's not going to happen, really, is it?
I'm not sure if it won't happen. I think that this issue has, for the first time, there's almost national consensus that this is something that should not have happened. It has incensed the public. And if a party is serious about this election, they would realize that this issue needs to be explained in the detail that would satisfy public opinion.
But it's not really in President Zuma's interests to respond in depth to this, surely.
I think President Zuma would be part of a collective of government that itself in its entirety needs to respond to this.
Do you think it's weakened his political position at all?
It depends on the findings. I think let's see what the findings are. If they're comprehensive enough, it might not be. But if it leads to just a particular individual or a group of low-ranking officials taking the can for all of this, then it will certainly raise more questions that would need to be then answered at a later point.
And where would that leave your foundation? What would you do then? What would your strategy be apart from making these calls?
For the foundation, this was an issue that we thought was important. It's beyond the broad scope of our work. Our scope deals primarily with issues that deal with aspects of society that relate to non-racialism.
But you have waded into the fray.
We have waded into this because it's an issue of national concern. It does have, as you would have seen in social media and so forth, implications, and there have been comments that of the sectors of society have put this in a very racist overtones. There are racist overtones to how it's being interpreted. And it's on that basis that the foundation thought that this issue needed to have been responded to.
Right. Interesting to see that the Gupta family tonight in a statement saying that all of this is possibly a slanderous plot by the media, and they don't want to comment anymore.
Now, it's beyond the media. I think that that's a very simplistic response. It's one that underplays the seriousness that somebody like Ahmed Kathrada himself would have demonstrated through the issuing of this statement.
Thank you very much for joining us. Neshaan Bolton with us here, who is the Executive Director of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation.
News that moves. eNCA.com.